Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Distorted Podcast. Today's topic, I wanted to talk about something that comes up a lot, not necessarily in a therapeutic setting, but just when people start talking about mental health, especially when they talk to me about, distortions in the way that we attack that, try to have rational thought, resolvable thought. And one of the things that comes up is I hear people make the mistake of equating a rational statement with rationalizing, right? And so rationalizing is something that, is a way for people to try to justify a behavior or justify a thought process. And the justification is basically in order to support a way that they think. So rather than challenge the way that you think, you're going to give it permission. And rationalizing is giving it permission. The rational concept, much different, is a way to challenge your thinking, especially if there's a distortion. And I've kind of touched on this. There's over 20 different versions of distortions. That it causes your speech to change, your perception to change, and then, in fact, the way you behave and emote. When I rationalize, when I try to challenge a distortion, my goal is to turn it into something resolvable. So my new thought's going to equate to something that is factual, something that helps me feel the way I want to feel, but also reaches a goal or expectation. Rationalizing is not challenging how I'm thinking. It's looking for reasoning to justify staying exactly where I'm at. So that's a premise. Now, you say, okay, that makes sense. I want to break this down even farther to kind of show you how it complicates things. I've talked a little bit before about how speech is important, that sometimes you'll have people tell you in a thought, I feel a certain way, okay? What they really mean is they think a certain thing. Now, that's the first challenge and change, is to take the statement, I feel like you don't communicate with me, to I think you don't communicate with me, or I feel like you're a difficult person to be around, to I think you're being difficult. Then changing the I think statement just to a statement. Here's why. When you put it out as a thought, you, of course, are going to determine that to be factual, okay? The way you think is always going to be supported by something that you would then identify as true. This is problematic because we know that the most common way that thoughts distort something that is perceived as fact, but it doesn't actually support you emotionally, and it doesn't get you to your goal. That's the most common way it presents itself. Something is said, it's a fact, and so people run with it. Like I said initially, if I'm rationalizing that, and the default is, I think a certain way, therefore it's true. That default is then supported if I then rationalize using evidence that supports confirmatory evidence, we would call it. I'm only going to look at things that already confirm what I believe. I'm not going to look at any evidence that's contrary to that. I'm going to base it on what I think and not an actual think. I feel uncomfortable around rude people. I think people are rude. And then lastly, people are rude. You can see how that comes across so much differently if I just claim people are rude, or even if I said all people are rude, or all people who believe this are rude. The one that we get in the faith business is, Christians are hypocrites. All Christians are hypocrites. Well, clearly, the minute you put the all in front of it, it's a distortion. Certainly, there are some people who claim faith who are hypocritical in the way they present it. Looking for hypocritical statements and clipping those statements to make them reinforce what you already think, that's just rationalizing. Difference between saying you feel that thing, you think that thing, and actually a statement, objective statement. Christians are rude, Christians are hypocrites, versus I feel like Christians are hypocrites, versus I think Christians are hypocrites, to then just basically say Christians are hypocrites. They're very different. I hope that's coming across. Those are three different statements, okay? If we can transfer from feel to think, which is really what's going on, the feeling is being placed into that sentence to sort of fast track it, that what I think is akin to what I feel, which is not always true, and what you think doesn't always promote the emotion you want. There's the distortion right there, for instance. But taking it to the step of making a definitive statement, that's usually where we end up realizing this is not a factual statement that I just made. It's not a factual statement. I'm not a political guy, like I said, but I will use a political example because that's what's always on fire around here. All conservatives are blank. All liberals are blank. As soon as you start your thought out that way, you're in a problem. You have a problem. Take out the all. All conservatives are mean. All liberals are flaky. Liberals are flaky. Conservatives are mean. I don't have to say all. I can take that out. Those definitive type of statements are usually distortions. Ironically, they're the all or nothing distortion. They're the assumption distortion. They're the projection distortion. There's tons. We could even be magnifying distortion. We could be discounting the positive distortion. That's just 5 of 20. They all could apply. Distortions like to come in pairs. And I will cover all of them on future podcasts. But this idea that you can make a definitive statement and make it fact usually runs into a hard wall. But if I slip in the magic word, I think this thing, I'm always going to back myself up as that's a fact. You do think that way, no doubt. You do think that way. But there's the problem. That doesn't necessarily mean that what you're thinking is accurate universally, and it might not even be a fact. If I look for information to reinforce it, I'm rationalizing. Okay? If I challenge the thought to actually determine if it's based on fact, helping me feel the way I want to feel, helping me towards a goal, I can determine if the fact is rational or the thought is rational and therefore resolvable, meaning I can actually move on it, I can move through it. Thinking something is not where it ends, guys and gals. You have to go past that. You can't simply throw out that you think a certain way and then that puts it in rock, stone, and everyone has to agree with you. This is where we fall apart when we communicate to each other. You thinking something doesn't make it so. We usually look for ways to have a rational thought by challenging the premise. If, in fact, you can make a statement without the think, and it still holds true, then you can move through it. You can move past it. Here's another way of looking at it. A lesser common distortion is one that supports your feeling. So you're thinking something, it's causing you to have an emotional response that you want. The problem is it's not an actual fact. You just think it is. Now you're saying right now, well, who the heck are you to tell me that there's any difference? I'm nobody, but I am telling you there's a difference between you making a statement that starts with the premise that this is the way you think versus an objectified fact, separate from just you, okay? You think that this particular piece is possible or accessible, and that supports you feeling a certain way. You might feel empowered by that. I have access. I'm 5'6", guys. I never had access to professional basketball. Now, there are like 2 people out there that are 5'6" that actually played basketball. I think Muggsy Bogues was one of them. It's an outlier, okay? It's an outlier to be that height and be able to succeed at the professional level. Yes, you can do it. There's another distortion, possibility versus probability. You can do it. You can potentially be professional, but that's not what the bell curve shows us. That's not mainstream. The idea that someone that short can be professional does exist, but that's not the regular, that's not the default. The default, much taller people, okay? So again, let's go into this a little deeper. It might make me feel the way I want to feel to support that dream, that I want to pursue that, but it's not likely. It's possible, not probable, okay? If I think I can play professional sports, we know that that's a positive affirmation to get you towards the direction you want, but it's just not enough. The facts are, I feel funny explaining this, the facts are that I'm not the likely prospect, even though now I'm too old to do it too. But let's say when I was 20, I still was 5'5", 5'6". I still wasn't tall. I could have had amazing skills. I would have had to be at the 1%, 2% level to even be skillful enough to overcome my height differential and to be able to play at 5'6". Because like I said, there's only been, 3 or 4 people in the history of it that have played at that level. Maybe more back in the 20s and 30s because everybody was shorter. it's no mistake Will Chamberlain made 100 points because it wasn't anybody going to be able to defend him. He was much taller than a lot of other people. Okay, I digress. When you think something, again, it is going to be supportable by you being able to say, this is true to me, therefore I'm going to translate it as fact. Objectified fact is different from thinking something, okay? There's just a difference. I can think lots of things. Doesn't make them true. When I'm supported by an emotion that I want, I double down. It's making me feel the way I want to feel, and I think it's true. I know you've seen this out there, okay? They double down on it. They need to look for information that backs it up, rationalizes it. It is a thing for me to pursue. It is a thing for, even though it might be an outlier thought, an outlier feeling. That's usually, again, the distortions. I gave you a few of them 5 minutes ago. What we're trying to do differently through the stuff that I'm talking about is a rational process is different because I'm not going to try to fabricate my truth into a fact. Objective fact versus subjective, okay? Big difference. Take it even further on this, okay? It can be harmful for people to only extend to go from I feel about a certain thing to I think a certain thing. We already know, we've got tons of evidence out there, that it is harmful to go off of what you feel because that serves only the individual. It's not transferable to another person. Taking ownership over other people's feelings is very problematic. I am only able to guide myself in what I do and what I say. Other people's perceptions will always be separate from that, okay? If I can at least get to the first challenge, which is to change speech from I feel like you don't listen to I think you're not listening, and here's how it's affecting me. That's different. But if I get to the I think, I'm still not necessarily claiming something that is objectively factual for both of us. We seem to struggle with communication as evidenced by the fact that we fight, we argue a lot. We leave conversation unfulfilled. We leave conversation not feeling heard, that I could objectively step outside of that and say, I could work on my communication. Not everybody hears what I'm saying. Sometimes after I talk to somebody, I don't know whether or not they've understood what I was trying to say. Can be separated from, I don't think people listen to me. That's why they don't get me. Or communication is hard for me. I don't always understand communication. Sometimes I need to slow it down. Sometimes I need to have a conversation more than once. You know, even if we're talking about gender, just to throw this in here because ADD is a terrible thing to waste. Females in general can talk about something more than once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, same topic, because the process is the resolution for a lot of them. For most fellas, it's getting to A, B, C to get a conclusion and move on from it. But the idea of speaking about something is the process. She doesn't want your answer. She doesn't want your fix. She wants you to listen. We'll talk about intimacy another time, but there's a direct correlation to listening and validating that leads to intimacy on an emotional and physical level versus fixing or telling someone else what you think. So again, on multiple levels here, we're trying to take this to a deeper level. Rationalizing is taking what you think and running with it. Not challenging the fact that there could be a distortion in there, that what you think may not actually be a fact. I think I'm talking into a balloon, but it's actually a microphone. So I'm going to have a problem resolving that. I'm going to have a problem resolving that because you can objectively see that it's a microphone and not a balloon. I think it's a balloon. It's not enough, guys. It's not enough. It's not enough to simply state what you think and expect that to then advance the conversation. I think differently than you, but I need to have an objective statement in order to move past it, to challenge if there's a distortion happening. Me saying that I think this is a balloon will always be a fact to me if I have a distortion. Somebody lied to me when I was a kid and they told me this object in front of me is a balloon. And until I challenge that distortion, I'm going to lead with that distortion. I'm going to continue to struggle. I'm going to continue to stay stuck. I'm not going to be able to progress past this. It's unfortunate that a lot of times we're exposed to information, especially when we're younger, and we're integrated with it, and we learn it, and we hold on to it until there's a challenge later on in life that causes us to have to get past the distortion that we were given. Again, I'll use a faith example. I grew up Catholic. There wasn't a personal relationship with Jesus. It was just a functional relationship with faith, that God existed and that there were steps that you had to go through. There were procedures that you followed. There were systems in place to help guide you to a deeper relationship, but it wasn't a personal one with Jesus. One of the steps that I had to take when I was younger, because I chose to take it, was to challenge the concept that having a personal relationship was actually available to me. That might sound odd to some people, that I actually had to go through that process as a young teenager, as an older teenager especially, because that's really when I started to challenge it. That there was a system that had to be taken on, and that I was missing out on access because I thought that, not because it was a fact, but because I thought it. Again, if you have questions about this, feel free to ask them. I can elaborate on this another way. My goal of today is to sort of help us understand that this is complicated stuff. I'm just talking about speech at this point and how the transition from I feel, I think is just step one. We have to go to an objective statement so that we can challenge it for fact, challenge it for feeling, challenge it for goal. And I'm telling you from my own experience, having done this for a really long time, having something be a fact is the number one distortion that I see come across with, no matter what the actual specific distortion is, because like I said, there's 20 plus, that it's a fact for most people is what gets them stuck. Once I uncover with them, we go through it and we process it. Once I uncover for them that the reason all of this stuff ends up being a fact is because they think it. Breakthrough. Eye-opening. Life-changing. Because that's one of the biggest steps you have to take. Recognizing that, of course, if you think it, it's going to be real to you. And then you're still stuck and you struggle and you're like, I don't understand. I don't understand the disconnect between the fact that that driver that just cut me off is, I won't say the bad word, but you know the bad word, right? If we did Family Feud, everybody knows what the number one answer would be. They're a jerk. I don't like the person because of the fact that they put me in harm's way. No harm came to me, but my brain still processes that as harm because the potential for a car accident existed, because the behavior that was exhibited in front of me isn't something that I would do myself, or I tell myself I wouldn't do that. Heaven forbid anybody who's listening right now has ever cut somebody off and denies that they've ever done it. I've done it. I didn't want to do it. I didn't mean to do it, but I recognize I've done it. I didn't see the car. I cut them off. They honked the horn at me. Why'd they honk the horn? Because it's an attention grabber. It's also a way to express anger because I almost got hit and I don't want to get hit and I'm out of control and I'm in fear. You understand how fast those emotions hit you. So if I think they're a bad person for having done that to me, that makes sense. But are they actually a bad person? Probably not. They're probably just like you. They're probably a parent, a brother, a sister, a husband, a wife. They probably want to get home safe just like you. Do we really think that everyone who makes a traffic violation is a horrible human being? We don't. We don't. But we still in that moment think they're rude, think they're wrong. Hopefully out there right now, you're able to parallel that to many, 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 many different situations. If you're not, you probably need to call me. You should be able to parallel that to almost every human behavior that you're thinking about right now. What I am telling you is common, but it still needs to be challenged, okay? I appreciate everybody's time. Follow us how you can follow us. Look for us on the different platforms, YouTube and Rumble and Spotify. Look for us. Subscribe. Tell your friends about it. I'm going to continue to challenge some of these concepts, and I'm glad that you were able to join me. Before we go, how many times have you thought about buying a homeless person a pair of shoes or maybe lunch? I'm sure some of you have done just that. But is that person still homeless today? Did that small investment in a stranger's comfort help them get off the street, or did you just make their life on the street more comfortable, staving off the need to turn their life around? I want to talk to you about endofthetunnel.org. It's a privately run homeless outreach. They help people turn their lives around. They're not just giving away free food or money to people who aren't making good choices. If you've ever wanted to buy something for someone on the street but weren't sure what to do, this is how you can do that. This is how you can make sure that you're not just making someone's life more comfortable on the street. Instead, you can help somebody who's ready to turn their life around, get off the street for good. Go to endofthetunnel.org right now and see how remarkably affordable it is to really help somebody. Endofthetunnel.org. Check it out, guys. And I appreciate them sponsoring us for today's podcast. God bless.